Tone, we are going to discuss whether a setup at Sweetwater is worth the money or not. We know about Sweetwater's 55-point inspection. Some folks are very skeptical of that. We'll get into that in a minute. Some folks have too high of expectations for that. We'll get into that in a minute. But if you went the extra step and you paid for a setup at Sweetwater, would it be worth it, and why would you want to do it? Okay, first of all, let's talk about this guitar. This is the Epiphone Les Paul Standard. This thing is beautiful. It's, wow, like really, really beautiful. We unboxed it live. We played it a little bit. What a great guitar. At the end of the video, I'm going to tell you, we've got 3 or 4 things we want planned for this guitar. Some comparison things and some other things. We'll get into that at the end of the video. But we want to talk about setup stuff. We need to talk about this 55-point inspection thing. That's kind of the elephant in the room. First of all, it's only included for guitars over $399, which this guitar is, but a lot of really budget guitars are not included in that. They don't even ever take them out of the box, right? So how you get them is how you get them. The 55-point inspection thing, I think, is fairly misunderstood. It's basically, does the guitar exist? Does it have all its parts? If you look at that list, it doesn't say we're going to do a setup on it. It doesn't say, they do check intonation, they do check string height and stuff like that, but they check it to make sure it's within tolerances. Now, every manufacturer has various tolerances for their guitars. So they might say, this guitar, if the action is below 2 millimeters, it's fine. They may say if this action is below 5/64, it's fine. They may say whatever. It doesn't matter what those standards are for each manufacturer. Also, those manufacturers may have or do have a sell the guitar anyway, even if it has this little problem standard list. So like if it's beyond a particular point, please return it to the manufacturer. If it's not beyond that point, sell it to the public. Those things are actually on the manufacturer. And then of course, Sweetwater will probably step in sometimes when they don't like that. The thing is that none of that stuff is a setup. So when you get a guitar and the action is too high for you, or you get a guitar and after it shipped across the country to you, the intonation is a little bit off because the neck relief moved around or whatever, that kind of stuff. That may not be anybody's fault except for just how life is. What if you were to pay for a particular setup on a guitar? What if you wanted specific things done? Would it be worth paying them for? That has been done on this guitar. So what this is one of my Patreon supporters. Thank you to everybody that supports us on Patreon. There's a link in the description. One of my Patreon supporters wanted one of these, and he said, if I paid for a setup at Sweetwater and then had the guitar sent to you so that you could do a video on whether it was worth it or not, that would be cool, right? And I said, yeah. And we've got a couple other things planned for the video I'll tell you about in a few minutes, or a couple for this guitar. But one of the things he said was, I like to play 8s. So I'm going to have him put 8s on the guitar and I'm going to have him set it up for 8s. And I said, okay, so that's what we have here. Why would we want to have it set up? When you go to the Gibson website, you will see that the standard for string height at the 12th fret is 5/64. You will see from previous videos that we've done about nut height that like my Gibson Les Paul, the nut height was okay, but it was at a higher standard. Nut height always comes too high. They do that so that you can set the guitar up for yourself, because once you ground the nut away, you can't put it back without replacing it. So they leave it a little high. So sometimes it's 35 thousandths, which is way too high in my opinion. So what about this guitar? Well, we went ahead and went through all of the specs on this guitar. First of all, we looked at the neck relief, and it was perfect. It was almost flat. I like to set my guitars at totally flat, but this guitar was set almost flat. It was really, really, really well done. And then we went and we looked at the nut height. We go through each of the string heights on the nut height, and we see approximately 20 thousandths for the top couple 3 strings, and then it starts to go 15 and 10 thousandths, which is really, really low. Now, we didn't just leave this up to chance. We used our StewMac nut slotting gauge. I recommend that you get one of these things if you have more than one guitar to set up. I know they cost $100, but they are so worth it. You can see how quickly we can check the nut height and be super, super accurate. Now, you might say, yeah, but they're a couple thousandths different. A couple thousandths different is fine. What we don't want is 15 to 20 thousandths. We don't want one string being at 30. We don't want one string being at 20. We don't want the next string being at 15. We want this thing to be consistent. And what they've done here is they've gone from 20 thousandths, 20 thousandths, and then kind of just ramped it down to the higher strings. And they've also recut this nut a little bit because, these are 8s. So if you go to a smaller string gauge, you got to take the gauge of the string into consideration when you're cutting the nut. This is a really well cut nut. Really well. When you look at the angles, when you look at the nut height, when you look at everything, they did a really nice job with this. Next, we go to the string height. We look at the string height, and it's right about 60 thousandths. Of course, there's a couple thousandths variation in there when you go and you look across these string heights, but it's right around 60 thousandths. I love 60 thousandths. And then when I start to go down to the higher strings, at 55 and 50 thousandths, I love that. That says 2 things. One, that the fretwork is really good on the guitar because we can get away with that nice low action. And 2, that they've done it properly. Now, the standard for Gibson, if you go to Gibson's website and look at their videos, their standard for string height is 5/64, which translates to about 78 thousandths, which I think is too high. It's just below 2 millimeters. Incidentally, Fender for Telecasters and Stratocasters is somewhere around 2 millimeters, which personally I think is way too high. So being around that 60 thousandths is really, really nice. This guitar plays really well. I mean, really well. And with these 8s on here, man, you can move around like crazy. Absolutely phenomenally good. Then we move to intonation, because once you set all of those things, if you watched our last video, we're doing this in order. We go to string height next, and then we go to our intonation, and we look at it with our Peterson Strobo Plus tuner. This thing's really good. This is what I use for all of my guitar setups, and it's spot on. I mean, within reason, it's spot on. It's great. This is probably one of the best guitar setups that I've seen on any kind of shop setup guitar, like mass shop setup guitar. Now, if you go to your private tech that you know really well and he does a great job, that's awesome. But if you go to a big box store and have a setup done, I've never seen one this good. This is really, really good. This guitar plays really, really well. Is it worth buying? I think so. I think it's definitely worth, especially if you don't have the tools to do it. And I always encourage everyone to pick up a new guitar and do a setup on it out of the box. Absolutely. I think this is 100% worth doing. I don't know how much it costs. I didn't ask. I didn't pay for this. This is a customer guitar. Sweetwater didn't know that the guitar was coming to me for review. It was just a customer that bought the guitar and then had it shipped to me. So, and I actually had it shipped to a different address so that we would not have that whole mess around stuff. So this is as legit as we could get it. I think it is phenomenally good. I would definitely recommend it. This is a step above the 55-point inspection. That is definitely worth doing. And then you get the setup that you want, because you could actually tell them what specs you would like to have on your guitar. And if you don't know, as in the case of this gentleman, they did a really nice job just doing their version of a setup. Plans for this guitar. We're going to do a bunch of stuff. This is going to be kind of fun. The gentleman who owns this guitar wanted to do a Peter Green sort of setup on it. So we're going to wind a set of vintage spec pickups, and we're going to do a before and after sounds, so don't worry about that. But we're going to do a set of vintage spec pickups with the magnet flipped around in the neck position. We are going to do some Graphtec hardware, because we've got some Graphtec hardware upgrades for this thing, new tuners, a whole bunch of fun stuff. We're going to put all that in the guitar. We're going to rewire the guitar with some quality parts, although we're going to take this one apart first and see what's in here and see if that's even necessary, because sometimes this new Epiphone stuff is really, really good. So we'll look at that first, but I know we're definitely getting new pickups. That's what's coming in here, and then of course some new hardware as well. Before we do any of that though, I have a Gibson Les Paul as well. And so what I want to do is do a comparison video between these two guitars and show you the similarities as well as the differences. There's a lot of differences between these two guitars. Not is it worth it, all that kind of stuff. That's all relative to you. That's something that is a decision you can make, but I want to show you the technical differences between these two guitars. We're going to take them both apart. I'm going to show you a bunch of different things, and then you can decide value for money, whether it's worth it for you or not. But that's what we're going to do with these two guitars. So if you have not subscribed yet, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. We're inching towards 100,000 subscribers, so I appreciate all of you who have been a part of the community. And this is going to be an exciting and fun. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time and haven't had the guitars in hand to do it. So I'm really excited to do it. Anyway, yeah, thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next video.